You know that annoying neighbor thing? Mine was turbocharged with power, a clipboard, and a goddess complex. She was the kind of person who was born to supervise others. If there was a competition for neighborhood moral inspector, she'd win easily, with a trophy, sash and all. But the problem wasn't just her attitude, it was her position. President of the HOA, and not just any position, the most insufferable one that ever existed on this side of the country. At first I tried to be the nice guy. I said hello, smiled, pretended to care when she talked about the aesthetic standards of the community. I thought I was just another one of those women with too much time and not enough therapy. But then she started picking on my lawn. My lawn. The only one on the street that looked like a fertilizer commercial, so green and uniform. I watered it carefully, used organic products, no pesticides. It was my pride. And apparently, her nightmare. She said my lawn was visually aggressive. Yes, that's right. Aggressive. As if a healthy patch of grass could cause trauma. The rest of the neighborhood had yellowish, dry grass, some parts with apparent clay. But me, I kept mine like a private golf course. That bothered me. She said it unbalanced the visual whole of the street. In other words, she hated that something in the neighborhood looked better than what she herself had. The old, wounded ego formula. The complaints started small. A little note left in the mailbox. Please maintain color standard in the acceptable shades of the HOA palette. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a green palette. But fine. I ignored it. Then came the official notice. It alleged landscaping violation for excessive use of water resources and color outside the community standard. Color outside the standard. That's what it was. She thought my lawn was too bright, that it reflected the sun in a disturbing way. I swear I thought it was a joke, until the fine came. $50,000. $50,000. For having the best-kept lawn on the street. A 2-page paper, signed, stamped, with 3 absurd clauses, and a threat of civil proceedings if I didn't pay by the end of the month. I reread it 3 times. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't April Fool's Day. It was real. When I went to talk to her, I imagined that she would go back on her word, that maybe she had exaggerated, that it was just another power play disguised as bureaucracy. But the woman was firm, with a little smile that seemed to say, "I've finally brought you down." There was no room for conversation. She saw me as a threat, a free man with a perfect lawn, laughing in the face of her little rules. Then something inside me snapped, like a dry twig, and I decided that I wasn't just going to swallow it. I wasn't going to pay the fine. What's more, she was going to feel every penny of that humiliation turned into revenge. I stayed up all night. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started researching. Plot plans, municipal records, rights over adjacent streets, and rights of way. And that's when the universe smiled at me. I discovered that the only street that gave access to the main entrance of the condominium was technically part of a lot that was up for auction. An old dispute between the town hall and a bankrupt developer. And what's more, the starting bid was lower than what she was trying to get out of me with the fine. I went to the registry office the next day. I did the math, talked to a lawyer, moved some savings around, sold an old boat I didn't even use. 30 days later, with all the paperwork signed, I officially owned the plot and the only viable entrance to the community. The rest? It was all narrow streets, cul-de-sacs with weight limits, and no functional exit. If I wanted to, I could close the passage at any time, and that's what I did. I woke up early, bought 2 large signs, an automatic gate, installed cameras, and put up a clear sign, private property, access for a maintenance fee, US $100 per vehicle. The neighbors were shocked. The news spread faster than gossip in a WhatsApp group. Some laughed, others cursed me. Some thought it was temporary, a provocation, but I kept at it. Day after day, car after car, tax after tax. And the woman? Oh, she freaked out. The first time she saw the gate, it was a spectacle. She got out of the car, huffing, her eyes wide, as if I'd ripped the gate off her house and made a fire with the fences. She got out of the car, shouting that it was illegal, that she was going to sue me, that I was abusing my power. I just looked at her and replied, "It costs $100 to get through, ma'am. Card or cash?" She paid. Her face crumpled, her dignity evaporating and the card trembling in her hand. The sound of the billing machine processing the $100 sounded like a well-rehearsed symphony of revenge. The receipt came out, I handed it over like someone handing down a sentence, and she got into the car, huffing like an exploding kettle. But that was only the beginning. Over the next few days, the entire community was in an uproar. The HOA group became a battleground. People tried to figure out if it was legal, if I could even charge for the ticket, if there was any way to stop me. The common sense people called for dialogue. The people who were her puppets started making speeches about abuse of civil power. And the silent ones? They paid up and got on with their lives. What nobody expected was that I would be as meticulous as she was. I installed a camera with a license plate reader, issued monthly bills for frequent residents, created QR code entry passes, made a mini website with an online payment option, and even implemented a loyalty system. After 10 tickets, I'd get a coffee coupon from the food truck around the corner. Yes, I took my revenge to the corporate level. In less than 2 weeks, the payments exceeded the amount of the absurd fine she tried to impose on me. Every car, every driveway, every angry honk was a dollar bill dripping straight into the account. And this began to annoy me in a way that even she couldn't disguise. First came the aggressive attempt. Letters from the HOA demanding that I justify the charge. I tried to ignore it. Then came the community inspectors. A man in a polo shirt and a woman who looked like she'd never smiled in her life, trying to photograph my gate, measuring the width of the street as if that were proof of some irregularity. They were startled when they saw that I had notarized copies of the ownership contract, a notary's registration, and even a legal opinion explaining that the street was, in fact, a private easement with controlled access. After that, she began to lose control. HOA meetings turned into chaos. One failed attempt after another to pass some rule that would prevent me from continuing to charge. But there was no loophole, and the more she tried, the more people sided with me. Because, at the end of the day, she was hated. Not by me, by everyone. It was just that no one had had the courage or the creativity to face her with the same coin before. Jokes began to emerge. T-shirts with my face printed on them saying, "I'm with the owner of the street." Neighbors offering free coffee to anyone who showed their toll receipt. And even memes with her face holding a credit card, captioned with, "This is the price of controlled aesthetics." It was a social spectacle. A silent revolt dressed up as collective irony. But of course, the woman wasn't going to take it quietly. She tried to sue. She went to the town hall, complained, whined at public meetings that I was attacking the freedom to come and go and creating an oppressive system within a peaceful community. They tried to paint it as an act of tyranny, but the town hall laughed it off, literally. The city lawyer said that the plot was mine, the charge was legal, and that if anyone wanted to resolve the problem, they could try to buy the land back for 10 times the amount I paid. And as icing on the cake, I started investing the profits in my own land. I put in night lighting, digital signage, bilingual signs, a loudspeaker with background music. The access was more modern than many shopping mall parking lots. People who didn't even live in the neighborhood came to see it. They'd post on TikTok, comment on the videos. The guy who charged the HOA and won. It was surreal. From a very green lawn, I became the symbol of resistance in the American suburbs. One day I received a letter from a resident of another state congratulating me. "You're a hero of freedom, brother. A patriot with a gate." I laughed, but I kept it. The woman, however, didn't laugh. She freaked out. Literally. She had a nervous breakdown at a meeting, shouting that the community had been hijacked by a lunatic with control over urban mobility. She said that this was dystopia materializing in real time. And maybe she was right. But at least this time, Dystopia charged a ticket, and the profit was all mine. At this point, the gate became a celebrity. There were even people asking for selfies in front of the gate. There were people who stopped their cars just to take a picture of the sign. Private property, 100 reais per ticket. Discounts for haters. The neighborhood has never been so busy. Ironic even, considering that the president of the HOA has always preached harmony and silence as pillars of civilized coexistence. But her ego was not an easy animal to tame. And after failing to shut me up with lawsuits, legal threats, and shouting sessions at community assemblies, she decided to go for a dirtier strategy. She started planting rumors. First, there were whispers in the neighborhood Facebook group. Did you know that the owner of the gate has a record for vandalism? Obviously, false. Then, they said he installs hidden cameras to spy on people. They even went so far as to insinuate that I had links to local gangs because a friend of mine appeared in a straight-brimmed cap passing by the entrance. It was a real suburban soap opera. But she forgot one important detail. Neighbors may be gossipy, but they are much more spiteful towards those who make them pay a fine for leaving their rubbish on the sidewalk. She was that kind of person. And people's memory is selective. But when it comes to the person who fined them for planting the wrong flower, nobody forgets. The response was immediate. The lies began to fall one by one. The residents themselves started posting prints, photos, audios, exposing the circus. A man from the end of the street, a war veteran, said in the group, "If this man is a criminal, let them arrest me too, because paying to pass hurts less than receiving a note saying that my fence is too rustic." Things started to get out of hand, and that's when she made her final mistake. She hired a construction team and had them start building a new alternative entrance, a makeshift shortcut that crossed a piece of vacant land at the back of the condominium. But the land in question was in a protected environmental zone, and she made absolutely no formal request. Nothing. No protocol. She went straight in with a tractor, cement, and 3 orange cones, thinking she could force her way through. On the second day of work, city inspectors, environmental activists, and even a local news channel arrived. She tried to invent that it was an emergency road, and that the neighborhood was hostage to a resident with authoritarian tendencies. One of the inspectors asked if she had any authorization. Her answer was a printout of an email she wrote to herself, with the title, "Symbolic Approval from HOA." It was so ridiculous that it became an instant joke. The fine came. Quick, sharp, and saltier than all my fees combined. She was sued by the city for trespassing in a protected area, destruction of native vegetation, and violation of environmental laws. Estimated value, almost triple what she had tried to get out of me with the lawn fine. Karma, eh? I found out all about it on television. I sat down with a bucket of popcorn, beer in hand, and watched the special. Syndic causes controversy by trying to open a shortcut in a forbidden area. She appeared from a distance, trying to hide her face with a clipboard. If it hadn't been real, I would have said it was a sitcom episode. That same day, while she was organizing a mini protest in front of my gate with 3 friends and a sign that read, "Freedom yes, gate no," I received an email notification. The judge had rejected yet another attempt by her to suspend my control over the street entrance. The judge's justification was a work of art. Being unpleasant is not illegal, and in this case, the resident acted within the law, only with a certain enthusiasm. I printed out the order, put it in a frame, and hung it on the garage wall, framed between 2 photos, one of my green lawn and the other of the gate on its first morning in operation. That evening, as the gate was lowered once again, I heard the engine of her car stopping on the other side. I got out and asked, with the same forced politeness she always used, "Cash or card?" She didn't even answer. She just threw down a rolled-up 100 and started the car. The paper fell slowly to the ground, like a white flag made of pure wounded pride. The days following the impromptu protest were strangely silent. No note, no new notification from the HOA, no pamphlet printed with new guidelines stuck in my mailbox. It was as if the woman had disappeared, or, more unlikely, learned to accept defeat. But this silence, believe me, is never peace. It's just the sound of the ego mending itself before the next attack attempt. And it came. He came with a formal invitation. Yes, you read that right. An invitation, printed on thick paper, gold edges, in cursive font, and smelling of expensive perfume. The HOA is honored to invite all residents to the Community Reconciliation Dinner. It even had an RSVP. It was a new project of hers, according to the text, a fresh start, a new cycle of cooperation and coexistence. It might sound noble if it hadn't been signed by her, and if the event hadn't taken place in the ballroom exactly 10 meters from my gate, a place that, naturally, could only be accessed through my gate, and, of course, by paying the $100. The irony hit me harder than the sun on my windshield at noon. On the day of the event, I organized everything as usual. Gate working, payment system active, QR code printed, and even a welcome table with snacks and a sign. Pay, smile, and enter. We're all here for the love of socializing. I could be provocative, but I've always been a good host. As the cars began to arrive, I realized that something was wrong. Too many people. Faces that weren't from the neighborhood. Luxury cars, people dressed up as if it were a gala evening. There was even a van with a caterer's logo on it. She hadn't just organized a dinner. It was an event. With a DJ, a French buffet, and speeches. From her, of course. She appeared in a dark blue dress, high heels, hair up, and that polite little smile that only fools people who have never been fined for planting hibiscus without permission. She tried to drive straight past, ignoring my presence, as if I were the valet. But the system was automatic, and automatic doesn't forgive. The gate didn't go up. It was then that she turned around, her face tensed and her frown deepening like someone swallowing a lemon, and said, "I'm organizing a community event. I can't pay for every guest. That goes against the spirit of social integration." I kept my posture, took a deep breath, and replied, with the same calm she used to say, that my waste garbage can was half a centimeter over the permitted limit. The spirit here is digital, and it costs $100 a car. She gave me a look that tried to be superior, but the glint of desperation was already seeping through. The queue of cars formed behind. The buffet started honking. People in fancy dress complained, looked sideways as if they had been invited to a movie award, and had stopped at a highway toll booth. She gave in. She swiped her card, and each guest had to do the same. $100 per car. More than 100 cars. The bill, you can imagine. At the end of the evening, she gave her speech. She spoke of unity, of overcoming conflicts, of looking to the future, but her voice was dry. The applause was lukewarm. The food was good, but the taste of defeat was stronger. And that night, I didn't even need beer. That's all I ate. A few days later, I received the official notification. She had resigned. She had handed over the presidency of the HOA. She said she was going to devote herself to personal projects and mental well-being. The note was formal, without emotion, but those who know her know. It was a silent admission that he had lost. Today, the gate is still there. With less traffic, it's true. Most of the residents have signed up for the monthly pass, which now costs a lot less, since the costs have been more than covered. The gate has become a symbol of the fact that not everyone bows their heads, that sometimes the greenest grass is on the side of those who know how to play the game with the same weapons. I still look after the pitch with pride. And the gate. Oh, and the referee's frame, which has now been given its own lighting in the garage. If you ask me, I'd say that I never intended to go to war. But if someone comes and threatens me with a fine for taking good care of what's mine, I'd better be prepared. Because where she saw a very green lawn, I saw the fuse of a revolution. And in the end, to this day, she still pays to get past me. And if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.